activities plan that was developed with input from Yellowstone County school superintendents, athletic and activity directors. I realize that some of the restrictions we will discuss will not be popular with some, but we must work from the premise that the most important thing we need to do is keep our kids as safe as we reasonably can. Activities and athletics are an important part of school life, and as we have had to do many times during this pandemic, we need to adjust how we do things. Governor Bullock's directive for everyone age 5 and over to wear masks in public indoor spaces applies to schools. He made this clear in a written document this last week. So let's talk about the plan itself. We cannot address all the risk of the COVID-19 pandemic, but in working with Yellowstone County School District superintendents, activity directors, and athletic directors, we have come up with a plan to support school-related activities associated with athletics. The Yellowstone County plan is for high school and middle school athletics and associated activities, and my new public health officer order details additional safety requirements for students, coaches, managers, and others involved in these activities. We won't review every element of the plan, but I want to talk about some key points. Some of the safety requirements: keeping 6 feet away from others and good hand hygiene for students, coaches, and staff during all school activities, competitions, and practices. Masks must be worn, except when athletes are in the game, running, or when band members are playing woodwind or brass instruments. Precautions must be taken on team buses, including everyone wearing masks, sitting in the same assigned seat on every trip, and sanitizing buses between each trip. Cheer squads may perform, but they must be physically distant from one another. Working journalists may cover these activities, but they must wear masks and maintain a distance of at least 6 feet from others. The governor's directives make the event sponsor responsible for enforcing COVID-19 safety requirements, as well as all requirements of the directives. For school activities, the sponsor is the school. For competition, the sponsor is the home team's school. The Yellowstone County plan applies to everyone from other counties while attending or participating in school activities in our county. It is the responsibility of the home team to make certain that visiting teams from outside Yellowstone County are aware of the requirements of our county. The full plan will be available on the Riverstone Health website. It has been distributed to members of the media. As I said, we will not review the entire plan today, but there are some key elements I'd like to highlight. Let's start with screening and quarantine. Athletes, musicians, cheerleaders, and other students participating in activities, and all school personnel will be screened before every practice and competition for symptoms of COVID-19. Those who screen positive for any of these symptoms, even mild symptoms, will be removed from the practice or game in the interest of safety to other students and staff. Any student or adult testing positive for COVID-19 will isolate at home according to the guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services. Any student or adult identified as a close contact of a person who tested positive will quarantine at home. Those who are isolated or quarantined will, of course, be precluded from participation in activities until they're released from isolation or quarantine by public health. Let's talk about spectators. This activities plan prioritizes student participation, but prohibits spectators. As we have said many times, whenever people congregate, there is risk of transmitting COVID-19. To reduce the risk of having to quarantine more student athletes, we have opted to remove one source of congregation, fans and spectators, from at least the early days of these activities. The restrictions announced today may be relaxed if COVID-19 data indicate that it is safe to do so. We must recognize that there are a lot of changes happening in a very compressed time frame that all could increase the risk of disease transmission and higher case counts. Kids are going back to school. Sports and other activities are beginning. Travel between different counties and parts of the state will occur as games get underway. Families are finishing their summer vacations and time off, and the workplaces will become more compressed as more workers are back. And several thousand young people from all over will come to Billings to start college. As we seek to balance safety and some sense of normalcy, some things must be changed. And for athletics and activities, it is the absence of fans as we begin the fall seasons. We've seen schools around the country attempt opening with lesser restrictions. Too often, it has not gone well. In consultation with our school district partners, we have adopted a philosophy of beginning with more restrictive limitations, and then, if safety is demonstrated, we can talk about relaxing those restrictions later. I realize and fully appreciate that many families and longtime fans of our wonderful schools and programs will be disappointed and upset that spectators are not allowed as we determine the impact of these activities on disease transmission, case counts, and the resulting number of people in isolation and quarantine. This is not an easy decision or one taken lightly. It is a decision that recognizes the importance of allowing our children and youth some sense of normalcy in these decidedly unusual times. It recognizes what I have said over and over. We cannot eliminate risk, but we must manage and mitigate risk to the best of our collective ability and wisdom. Managing and balancing these risks often means that something has to go to support the continuation of an activity. For athletics and activities, right now it is fans and spectators that must give way to allow our students to perform and enjoy their chosen activity, their passions that are such a critical part of school life, in a more safe fashion. Today I'm joined by Mike Ryan, Athletic Director for Billings Catholic Schools, and Mark Wall, Athletic Director for Billings Public Schools. I appreciate their partnership in developing this plan and their willingness to share their school's perspectives with the community. Before we hear from Mike and Mark, though, I'd like to read a brief statement in support of the plan from one of our smaller districts in the county, Huntley Project Schools. We had invited our friends from Huntley Project to participate today, but due to scheduling conflicts, they were unable to do so. I appreciate the effort that Superintendent Mark Wandel and Activity Director Tim Bastian made to ensure that the voice of our smaller and more rural districts are heard. So I'll now read their statement. This is addressed to Yellowstone Unified Health Command. The Huntley Project School District has been appreciative of the efforts and attention given to the Yellowstone County Unified Activity Plan. The difficulties of balancing the needs of everyone is a task that few want to do. The Critic by Theodore Roosevelt sums this up perfectly, and we appreciate us being able to voice our ideas, concerns, and perspectives. The Huntley Project School District will support and meet the requirements to help ensure that our students have activities to participate in. The effort of everyone will be needed as we continue to navigate the unusual landscape of COVID-19. John has listened to and responded each time to our ideas and concerns in a quick fashion and has consistently offered his insights. This is respected by us at Huntley Project. Our concern for parental access to games and travel is based on student safety, and we recognize that this opinion is our viewpoint. We do understand that adjusting this topic and continuing to discuss it allows the opportunity to have activities rather than our county calling off athletic events entirely. We look forward to continue to be part of discussions to devise a plan. We acknowledge the challenges of trying to make a plan that works for small and large districts, and that Huntley Project School District will abide by the plan as we understand that in times of adversity, activities teach us to control what we can control and move forward to individual and team successes. It is signed respectfully, Mark Wandel, Huntley Project School District Superintendent, and Tim Bastian, Huntley Project Activity Director and Transportation Director. I'd like now to invite Mike and Mark to talk about how this plan will be implemented within their districts. After their remarks, we'll be prepared to take questions. So, Mike, why don't you go ahead?
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Ryan, the Activities Director for Billings Central Catholic High School. And to start, I would like to thank John and the Yellowstone County Health Department for the work that they've done on this plan. I know there are various opinions regarding COVID-19 and the guidelines that dictate what we do in today's world. But I think this is a plan that we should all want to support if it improves the odds of our student athletes participating in and hopefully completing a fall activity season. Our approach at Billings Central has been to educate our athletes and the different stakeholders as much as possible. We're hoping that through education, they will gain a better understanding of the guidelines that are going to determine what we can and can't do at these events. We want to adhere to those guidelines, especially early on, with the hope that there'll be early successes so that we can loosen the restrictions that are in place and get more people back to these events. At our parent meetings, there were fewer questions than I anticipated. A lot of the uncertainty that exists today makes it difficult to give a specific answer to some of these questions simply because things are changing so rapidly. But again, I think the education part of it is a big component. How implementing this is going to look for Billings Central is going to vary depending on our facilities. We use a variety of facilities or around the city, and so implementing it may look different at each facility. But obviously, what we do is going to be governed by the guidelines that the county has put out, the guidelines that the NFHS and the Montana High School Association have issued. So social distancing and the wearing of masks are going to be two main components of how we implement our plans. Just like everything we've done the last couple of months, you just smile and keep moving forward. Bottom line is we're trying to do what's best for our student athletes. Our goal, and I don't want to speak for Mark, but our goal when we initially met was to try and do everything we possibly could to ensure that our student athletes would be able to participate this fall. So I'm hoping for some early successes. I think the plan that we have in place will allow for that. And I'm looking forward to getting all of these fall seasons started. And with that, I guess I would answer any questions that you might have.
Hi there, my name is Mitch Laggy from Q2. Any particular worries stand out in your mind, I guess, with implementing the plan or making sure that students follow all the rules and guidelines?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say that I have specific worries. I mean, obviously, there's an inherent risk in being involved in high school activities. The COVID-19 just adds a whole new component to that. And I think that for the most part, the student athletes that have made the choice to participate in fall activities are confident in the plan that we have in place. And again, it's evolving constantly, but kids are kids, and the social distance, from what I've seen, the social distancing part of it has been one of the more difficult aspects to deal with because they want to be together. The mask wearing, not an issue. We had a group come in the other day, told them they had to wear masks, and then you had to police the social distancing part of it a little bit. But until I guess this is a work in progress, so to speak. So until we're actually able to set things in motion, see what kind of results we're getting, it's hard to say that I have a specific concern.
This is Jess with Yellowstone Public Radio. Can you hear my question, basically?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Perfect. What about student athletes who are seniors who are looking at scouting opportunities? Since there won't be opportunities for spectators, I guess how will they be able to show their stuff off for scouts?
Good question. Most of the facilities that we participate in will have the Pixelot cameras, the NFHS Pixelot cameras. So it is possible for spectators to purchase a subscription to the NFHS network, and then they can watch those games online. I would say that looking at our fall activities, there are some like cross country and golf where this won't happen, but with the football, the volleyball, and the soccer, most of the facilities that we play in will have the NFHS cameras.
Can we just hold further questions till we're done?
Sure. I will introduce Mark.
Go ahead.
Hey.
Well, good afternoon. First, on behalf of the Billings Public Schools, I would like to thank Mr. Felton and his team here at Riverstone Health for their continued understanding and support of activities for our kids. Really, the easy thing would have been to cancel activities. That would have been the easy thing to do. But we are so truly appreciative of the opportunity to start activities. I guarantee you we had some very excited coaches and kids, very relieved coaches and kids last week when Friday rolled around. Please know that our coaches and kids are highly invested in the safety process and have been working extremely hard to live this new normal. We also appreciate the consistent guidance we are receiving from the Yellowstone County Health Department. And this set of guidelines is one example of that. Mr. Felton has also taken a lead role in helping us navigate the AA guidelines to help us work across county lines and to communicate our needs with Governor Bullock. We appreciate that additional support. I would also like to take this moment to thank all the other ADs and superintendents from around the state. I'm especially appreciative to work with people who are such kid advocates in a time like this. And that really shows when you get into situations like this and you start working with them. So while these COVID issues continue, our goal is simple: to do what is necessary to keep kids participating in the safest environment possible. The bottom line is that these guidelines that we are faced with are very difficult. We have high expectations for the diligence required to maintain a safe environment for every participant. We all wish things could be normal and that we didn't have to deal with these issues. But if we are going to accomplish our goal to keep kids participating, we truly need the support of everyone in our community. Right from the start, our activity coordinators, coaches, and administrators have been focused on the guidelines we have in place for participants, practices, and competitions. We are doing absolutely everything we can to make sure the guidelines are followed and that we can take every necessary step to ensure safe practices and events. We are working to build into habit the daily guidelines we expect. The Yellowstone County guidelines, as distributed here today, will be clearly communicated with each visiting team. The expectation will be that they follow our guidelines while they are visiting. We will also do what we can to communicate to our families the guidelines as set by other counties that our teams will visit. The county health officials from each county have made it clear that we must follow their guidelines as well. If and when fans are allowed to attend, we will welcome you. And we will add the additional guidelines to our duties to make sure that that everyone in the community can come to a safe event. In the meantime, we will do what we can to broadcast, televise, or live stream games so that families and communities can participate. Currently, we have cameras in all of our high school gyms and at Dallas Stadium. These cameras provide coverage through the National Federation network. To purchase a subscription, you can go to the NFHS network website at www.nfhsnetwork.com. All levels of game that occur in these venues will be live streamed. We are also hoping that we might be able to secure some television coverage to cover at least a few varsity competitions, and that our radio stations will continue the coverage they have provided in the past. We will be looking at other options as well, and as long as we can provide the equipment and manpower necessary, we will try to accommodate. We will do our best to get word out on any opportunities we might have as we proceed through this season. Lastly, I want to be clear as to our procedure in the case that one of our participants either tests positive for COVID or who has identified as a first contact to someone who has tested positive for COVID. Please know that we are in close contact with Mr. Felton and his team here at Riverstone Health. Our main process is to follow the instructions as given by the health department. The people here at Riverstone will be the ones to determine who gets tested, who quarantines, and who and when a participant can return. School District's 2 responsibility will be to make sure that kids are safe at practice, that they are going home if they are not feeling well, that they are following all the required safety guidelines, and that we are supporting those participants and families who are going through the process of testing or who have been quarantined. Again, thank you to everyone in our community for your support of our kids and our programs. We look forward to doing what we can to complete the fall season.
I'd like to, first of all, thank Mike and Mark for coming out today and sharing their perspectives. This truly was a collaborative effort to come up with our county plan. I want to thank all the Yellowstone County school superintendents, athletic directors, and activity directors for working with us to develop this plan to help mitigate and manage the risks inherent in athletics and associated activities. These decisions are hard, and all of us wish they were not necessary. But we all know that the most important thing is to give our kids a chance to play as safely as possible. We acknowledge there will likely be cases of COVID-19 associated with these activities and fully expect that this plan will evolve over time as the incidence and prevalence of COVID-19 shifts in our community. For now, being more restrictive in our requirements allows us to ease restrictions if the conditions warrant. I sincerely hope that we can do that as the school year and seasons progress. Thank you all for coming today, and we'll now take questions.
Will there be a limit to how many people at one time will be allowed at a sporting event?
Full team, the teams will be allowed to bring their full teams to the event, yes. But there will be no spectators, so that's the limit is.
So the 50-person limit that the governor has, I know he made an exception, right, for sporting events?
He made an exception for schools. So when schools are allowed to reopen, that allows them to exceed that number because, quite frankly, if you look at the schools in Billings, any one of those schools will exceed 50 very quickly. So he does allow for schools and activities, school-based activities, to exceed that number of 50.
I had a question about the spectators being prohibited, and it doesn't sound like you have really an idea yet of when they might be able to come back. You had mentioned when safety is demonstrated. That might be a good point on when spectators might be able to come back. Could you elaborate on what a successful year might look like before spectators come in, and what you're looking for before spectators start coming?
So we're going to be watching for what's happening with our case counts. As I mentioned, there's a lot of things that are happening all at once that will sort of all potentially increase the risk of disease transmission. We'll be watching for what's happening with the student participants themselves. Our coaches and athletic departments have worked really hard to develop processes by which they can cohort their participants so that if someone becomes ill, it doesn't necessarily take out the whole team. It might put a smaller group in quarantine. When we begin intermixing groups, so when we have adults that intermix and then they intermix with, then you really effectively take away the effect of that cohorting. So we'll watch and see, are we able to control, as cases occur, can we limit the number of student participants who are put into quarantine? We'll be watching the burden on our healthcare system and all the other burdens that we watch. If we see that we can manage that and we're not getting excessive numbers of cases, then we'll be able to look at relaxing some of them. We've seen some experience. We've said many times, you've heard the language, this is a rapidly evolving situation. The interesting thing about COVID-19, if I dare use that word, is everything we do is for the first time. This is the first time that we'll have had school athletics and activities since COVID-19 has been around. So we just have to see how it goes.
You mentioned for mask wearing, it excludes strenuous activity. Can you elaborate a little more on what directly qualifies as strenuous activity?
So for players who are on the bench, they need to wear a mask. For staff members who are on the sidelines, need to wear a mask. People who are actively participating in a strenuous way, so if they're running, like a cross-country runner, football players or volleyball players who are playing, they could take their mask off. When they go onto the bench, they need to put it back on.
And I guess more specifically, are golfers included in strenuous activity when they're playing golf?
Yeah, golfers are required. Golfing is a sport that naturally allows for spacing, and we always remember that space is our best friend in COVID-19. So as long as golfers are spaced appropriately by more than 6 feet, then they do not need to wear a mask while they're playing. Mitch, go ahead.
Is there a possibility, so if there's a small school here in Yellowstone County, they may have students that travel outside the county for whatever sport, and that county may have a less restrictive attendance policy, could parents travel to watch their student play in a different county?
Sure. The plan that we have put forth applies to activities in Yellowstone County. Other counties will have their own plans, and so as was said, we need to make sure that we understand when our teams travel what the restrictions or requirements are in those counties so that we can abide by them.
Thank you.
Are the restrictions for each sport pretty uniform, or will there be exceptions made? I used to wrestle, and I think of that sport specifically when I look at all these guidelines. Yeah, I'm just wondering, a very close contact sport like wrestling, are you going to be changing some of the guidelines or reevaluating sports like that?
Yeah, very possibly. This is really for the fall sports season. When we get into basketball and wrestling, those are different activities. We'll have to look at what makes sense there. So I think what you'll see is over time this plan will evolve as we understand more, as we learn more, and as the sports change. So, when you look at something like even in the fall season, golf is very different from football or volleyball in terms of interaction and closeness of contact. So we'll look at each sport as they come along.
So during a football game, people on the sidelines would most likely be wearing their masks, and then people who would be actually in the game physically moving around would not have to wear a mask?
Right. The governor's order allows for an exception to the mask wearing for people who are involved in strenuous activity. We did make one sort of little tweak in the plan that you'll see is for football, those athletes need to be masked if they're out for more than one play. So if we're in a situation where two people are shuttling plays in and out, for instance, if they're only out for one play, they don't need to mask. But if they're going to make more than one play, they will need to put their masks on. Any questions on the phone?
Yes, I had a question. Has there been any change in registration rates for fall school activities? Have they stayed the same, or are there less students registering for these activities?
I will turn that over to my school colleagues.
Yes, for School District 2, we have not seen a huge drop. A little bit in cross-country, and I think that's because the guidelines are fairly restrictive for the number of participants, the guidelines that came from the MHSA. But overall, throughout our summer program and into the fall, our participation numbers have held, and our participation over the summer was extremely good. And going into the fall, we're doing well. Our football teams have right around 80 per team, around 120 at West, and so we're holding pretty strong.
I've got a question kind of for either of you. Have there been other counties that have restricted Yellowstone County teams from playing there or from traveling there?
Not that I've heard of, no. There are other counties who have different interpretation of the 50 person rule, and they have that right to have that So there may be cases where we have to limit that, but we haven't heard that yet. So I don't think those plans have all been released yet. So I will immediately release our plan to those districts.
At this time, Park County is not allowing teams from Yellowstone County to participate.
Is it Bighorn too, or Bighorn as
Okay,
well?
Mike, can you come? Thank you.
Yeah, at this time, Park County has informed us that they will not, their health department will not allow teams from Yellowstone County to come in and participate. And in talking to their AD, Bighorn County was mentioned in there as well, but I know specifically, he said, we can't allow you to participate in this golf tournament scheduled for next week, so.
Is that because of the high case count? Is that what they said?
I don't want to put words into his mouth, but the understanding I got is that they consider Yellowstone and Bighorn counties hot spots, and they just don't want to take that risk.
Are there any other questions from anyone?
I've got one for,
Yeah, this is Jonathan with the Yellowstone County News. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay. Just a couple questions. First of all, we've kind of, heard, or maybe just comments out and about with fans that might by chance not want to leave. Maybe if they come to watch their, as a spectator or whatnot. Are there any plans of implementing, and regulating that, first of all? And then a second question to that would be, are there any limitations, on any sports broadcast or radio stations that will be going to those, those events and following the teams? And then a third question I'm going to throw at you, and I'll let you answer those as you go. Are the kids, when they're at school, and the elementaries and all those that go out for recess, we've heard that there are some schools, or maybe all of them, that the kids will have to wear the mask even outside during recess. And so I was wondering if you could comment on those. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try and get them. In terms of people who would like to go to the games, the bleachers will have to be closed. There won't be access for people to go inside and sit in the bleachers. In terms of the question about kids at recess, the governor's directive, which now applies to schools as a result of his directive of August 12th, does require masking when outdoor activities do not allow or appropriate physical distancing, or it's not observed. So if kids on recess either can't or don't maintain appropriate physical distance between each other, then they will be required to mask. And what was your middle question?
I think the last one was just in regards to, we have a sports broadcast.
Oh, yes.
YCN Sports, online streaming, and just wondering and following up on any limitations that you know of that might be for any radio stations or sports broadcasts for the schools.
Yeah, so the Yellowstone County plan does allow for journalists to be at the games, but they will be required to maintain distance and be masked like everyone else at the place. So that is addressed in the plan itself. Mitch, go ahead.
oh, and I think for Mark, with the streaming service you mentioned, is there a cost associated with that if people want to tune in?
There is through the NFHS. I think it's a monthly fee of like $9.99, or there could be a season fee too. So they can you can get that information at the NFHS. So every type of streaming we do has to be approved by the MHSA. So if we have other ways to do it, we will if we can get it approved.
Thank you.
Hi, Kevin Levine, KUCI. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead, Kevin.
Yes, you said that before every practice and game, all people associated are going to be not tested, but looked at. Who's going to be enforcing that? Is there going to be an independent person? Is it going to be or is it going to be through the schools?
It would be through the schools. So it's a very
then-
it's a very similar screening like many employers do, just asking about symptoms.
And then hypothetically, if, say, it's the Friday of a big football game and there's minor symptoms of a player and they don't report it, is there going to be any sort of punishment for that?
I will leave that to our athletic directors to answer that question.
Can you clarify your last question just a bit?
Yes, if a school is not correctly reporting screenings, if they're, if a coach or whoever is not correctly reporting screenings, are there going to be consequences to that? Is there any outline for consequences for that?
Well, the best answer I can give you is that the high school association has said there'll be consequences for schools that do not follow the guidelines that they've put in place. So I'm guessing that if a situation like that developed, that the high school association would then be responsible for any consequences that a school faced.
Yeah, I'd like to answer
Thank
that.
you.
For School District 2, I said this before, our coaches are highly invested. They love their kids, they love their sport, and they want this to work. Can we guarantee that every kid is going to be honest and disclose an illness or, whatever? Not necessarily, but our coaches are pretty good at recognizing when kids aren't themselves. And I have no doubt at all that our coaches will do the right thing when they recognize that there's a situation, whether it's the best player or not. I have no doubt that they will do the right thing. So I hope there's not punishment. Obviously, if we do find a coach doing that, we have to find somebody then who can get in there and do the right thing. But again, I have the utmost confidence in our coaches to do the right thing. They've all practiced their pre-screening processes throughout the summer. They've communicated their expectations consistently, and they're doing what they can. So I am confident that that won't happen often.
I have a question about the screening process. You mentioned questions for screening questions. Are there other temperature checks, things like that, that are part of that process?
Temperature checks are an option. CDC is actually recommending that schools not do temperature checks as a routine part of school because of the issue of sort of lining people up to wait for that. But the questions really are sort of symptomatic. Have you felt feverish? It's called subjective fever is a way to ask that question. Have you had a new cough that's unexplained? Have you lost your sense of smell or taste? Just sort of the usual list of questions. It can be done very quickly, but it's just important that we do ask the question. I would say in response to the previous question as well, the schools, many of the schools in Yellowstone County have been doing open gyms and weight training and things like that over the summer. And my experience with them has been that they are, as has been said, they're extremely motivated to do this right. The coaches want their kids to play. And so I share the confidence that Mike and Mark have expressed that people will do the right thing, because what we really want is we want kids to play. Any other questions?
How much in-person school attendance and activities, how much are those attached? So how much, what is there a threshold for how many people are in person for school and allowing sports to be played as well?
I guess I'm not quite following your question.
I guess, so currently there's some are in person, some are online for school. Is there a limit or is there a number of I guess we'll try. If let's say school doesn't, cancels all in-person instruction at a certain point, how does that affect sports?
If we reach the point that schools were canceling all in-person instruction, then we'd go back and certainly be revisiting the plan as we go along. As the local public health agency, we remain in very close contact with districts throughout the county. And so if things were going badly enough that we were thinking about canceling all in-person school, we would certainly have been a part of that discussion and would be well aware of what was going on. I can't imagine that as a surprise.
One more, just kind of tangentially related, but notice that the rolling testing averages have dropped at least the last couple of days, and I'm wondering if you could explain exactly why those testing averages have gone down.
The testing or the positive cases?
Well, both. It seems like the testing numbers have gone down as well as the positive cases the last couple of days.
Yeah, so a lot of the testing, or some of the testing facilities aren't open over the weekend. So what we see on Sunday are, it gets reported Sunday are really the results from Saturday. And it's always a day or two behind. In Yellowstone County, for instance, the Riverstone Health testing site doesn't operate on weekends. So we typically see fewer tests and fewer cases early in the week. So it's a pattern. If you look at the day-by-day case counts, you'll see that it's a pretty predictable pattern, that it's lower at the start of the week and then it picks up as more testing is done.
So the last 2 days, Monday and today, have not been noticeably different than from previous Mondays and Tuesdays. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's a pretty consistent pattern. I don't know that the precise numbers are the same. And bear in mind that in Yellowstone County, our numbers got a little skewed last week because as we've told you all, there was a number of cases that were not reported. There was a glitch in the reporting system. So last Monday, for instance, I think we reported 75 cases, which is very unusual for a Monday, but 60 of those were previous ones that got picked up because of the reporting glitch. Typically, this is the pattern we see. Early in the week, it's lower, and it gets higher later in the week. All right. Thank you all for.
Jonathan,
Oh, yes.
Jonathan at the Yellowstone County News again. Just following up on the governor's, I guess, threshold for the amount of cases and active cases that they are kind of requiring. I guess right now the number is 4 active cases. Can you maybe just comment a little bit on that, on what is considered an active case, considering, Yellowstone County has probably, I'm guessing, about 160,000 residents. And can you foresee that ever getting down in any time soon, maybe within the next year?
So, Jonathan, I'm not. My crystal ball tends to be a little hazy. Let's do the easy part of the question first. So, an active case is someone who has had a positive COVID-19 test and is still in isolation. They haven't met the definition of being recovered. So once someone meets that definition of being recovered, they cease being an active case and they can be released from isolation. In terms of how long we continue to have cases, I think I've said before, I think we're in for the long haul here. This is going to be a while, even with the potential of a vaccine, hopefully a treatment. The very best thing we can do to drive down those numbers is the simple preventive messaging that we've all heard so many times. Wear your mask, maintain your distance, wash your hands and surfaces, and maintain hygiene. That's the secret sauce to really lowering these counts. It's just not that secret. So I would be surprised if we're down below 4 for a good long time. How long that is, I don't know. We have, as you mentioned, we have a lot of people here and a lot of commerce in and out with people coming in and out of the community. So we would definitely love to see those case numbers go down. But to be below 4, I think, is a long ways for us.
But I guess I'm just trying to understand why the number 4, I'm just trying to understand, and we've had people even asking us why 4 compared to, especially Yellowstone County, with such a big amount. I mean, at this point, we've had some that have asked us, well, why not just make it 0, or 1? I mean, at that point, compared to, let's just say, like 15 or 20, where you really start to see it kind of moving up and down kind of in the area. But maybe you might be able to comment on that. And the other question I would have is, have you been in contact with the governor's office? I mean, because I don't know how often you guys might talk to them within your kind of association and kind of your realm. that you have?
So the number 4 came from the governor. I'd encourage you to ask the governor's office how that number was selected. We were not consulted on that, so I really can't answer that one. In terms of are we in contact with the governor? Yes, we are. Directly, many of us have had conversations directly with the governor. I spoke with him I think it was last Wednesday. He called me and we had a conversation. Others, we work through the state health department. So as individual health officers, we can work through the state health department. There's also the Association of Montana Public Health Officials, which is an association of the lead local public health officials in the state, which also works with the governor's office and the state health department. So there's a lot of ways that we communicate. It's often been said that Montana is a small town with really long streets, and that's as true in public health as it is anywhere else. We all know each other pretty well.
Yeah. And one final question. I know I asked this earlier, but I didn't feel like I got, a clear answer. In regards to the high school sports and the fans that are coming, you mentioned that they are, I don't know what the terminology you use, but they're blocking off or, taping around the bleachers and all that. But I know like a lot of games, like football games, for example, a lot of the spectators that come, they're all outside around the football field, kind of around the track. So are you saying, I guess, how do you plan to mitigate that if that happens? I guess I'm looking for more of a clarifying answer because I know a lot of people will probably ask that.
So the requirement is that there cannot be spectators at the venue. If people are on public property, that's a different question. In terms of people actually coming in to watch the game, it will be up to the event sponsor, which is, as we said, is the home team for athletics, to ensure that these requirements are complied with.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you all very much for coming today, and please be safe out there. Thank you.
And we were just listening to the Yellowstone County Health Officer, John Felton, of course, delivering a bomb to parents this afternoon. Spectators will be restricted from games and activities at fall sports in Billings. And so a lot of parents are reacting to that tonight. A lot of sports fans are going to be reacting to that tonight as well. They did unveil their activities plan, though, for fall high school and middle school sports. Just to give you some key points there, people will still need to keep their distance, keep 6 feet away, use hand hygiene, those sorts of things. Masks must be worn except for when players are on the field playing in things like football and volleyball. There will be assigned seats on buses when there is travel involved. Cheer squads will still get to partake and participate in school sports, but they will have to use some distancing, and full teams will still be allowed on the field. Yellowstone County will be in charge of enforcing some of these guidelines. Felton saying that the event sponsors responsible for the guidelines and applying those to visiting teams and educating them about what the plan is here in Yellowstone County. Athletes, musicians, and cheers, all of those will be people will be screened before they get into an activity or a fall sport, including coaches. But again, the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway this afternoon is fans will not be allowed in the stands during fall sports for School District 2. Felton saying it's not a decision that they took lightly, and they want to try and maintain some sort of a normalcy for kids this fall. He did say there is a caveat to that. If they have some early successes, they do hope they can loosen those restrictions. That will be just things like watching the case counts and things like that when it comes to COVID. So another option that they will have is live streaming sports for television. And that's something that parents can tune in for. Our Mitch Legge was there at the press conference, and he was going to recap everything that we heard this afternoon with John Felton and, of course, our athletic directors, and he's going to bring that to us at 5:30. So tune in tonight at 5:30 for the latest updates and, of course, other news that's happening in Billings. Have a great day.